Hello there. It's the third anniversary of Brexit. Many Britons are now regretting their country's exit from the EU. The third anniversary of a political event doesn't usually draw a dog from behind the stove, as we would say here in Germany, but in relation to the United Kingdom's relationship with the European Union and the unification project, however, several dates play a significant role this month. At the beginning of the year, it was 50 years since Great Britain, Ireland, and Denmark joined what was then the EEC, a happy anniversary that was completely ignored on the island. This was, of course, due to the anniversary, which will be celebrated for the third time this Tuesday when I'm filming this. The exit from the EU on the night of January 31st to February 1st in 2020. And 10 years have passed since the initial impetus for this isolation step. In January 2013, the then Prime Minister David Cameron gave in to national populists inside and outside his party and held out the prospect of a referendum on British EU membership. 52 to 48% was the narrow result in June 2016. At that time, many English people living in the neglected regions on the island felt they were the winners. In the eastern English county of Lincolnshire, more than 70% of eligible voters voted in favour of Brexit, and nationally at 75.6%, residents of the market town of Boston, who gave their name to the much more famous settlement on the other side of the Atlantic, came out on top. While the approximately 35,000 Bostonians were part of the majority of the population at the time, they are pretty much alone these days. According to a survey by market researcher Focal Data for the Unheard website, with the exception of Boston, there is now a majority everywhere on the island who consider the exit from the EU to be a mistake. These include neighbouring constituencies in Lincolnshire, traditionally conservative strongholds, as well as poor, always pro-Labour districts in the metropolises of London and Birmingham, where at least 60% wanted Brexit. Unlike the referendum or the general election in 2019, the Brexit vote and the left-right orientation of the British would increasingly fit together again. That was analysed by James Kanagasuriam from Focal Data. The exit vote is fading and differs less from the Conservative electorate. And that's not good news for the Tory government of Brexiteer Rishi Sunak, the fifth Conservative Prime Minister since that June day that fundamentally changed Britain's domestic and foreign policy, just in time for the third anniversary of Brexit. The Tories are regularly 20 points behind Keir Starmer's Labour opposition in the polls. All of the claims by the head of government and his divided party that Brexit will bring glorious progress to neglected regions seems increasingly implausible in the face of reality. Rather, the disadvantages of the isolation step are becoming increasingly clear. It was only last weekend that the university authority HESA shocked the billionaire university sector with new bad news. Since the final exit from the Internal Market and Customs Union at the end of 2020, the number of students from the EU has fallen by more than half. While young Germans, Italians or Baltics could previously study on the island for the already high price of £9,250 per year, they now have to shell out up to £38,000 for the same bachelor's degree in Bristol, Nottingham or Cambridge. Far too much, as most people think. The universities can't be okay with that, as it makes them all the more dependent on students from Asia. Not least under pressure from the government, the high proportion of students from the communist dictatorship in China is to be noticeably reduced in the coming years. Elsewhere too, Brexit is having a painful financial impact. The Independent Budget Authority, OBR, speaks of a loss of growth of 4%, not least to the significant damper on British foreign trade. Exports to the EU alone have recently fallen by 15%. The continuing dispute over Northern Ireland's special status is adding to the uncertainty of industry and trade. There, British and EU negotiators are struggling to shape the so-called Northern Ireland Protocol, which was part of the withdrawal agreement and will not be reopened. It is intended to keep the land border with the Republic open in the south and as demanded by the nationalist populace, but at the same time ensure the integrity of the internal market. And therefore, customs and import checks were imposed between Northern Ireland and the British mainland, which angered the pro-King loyal Unionists. Its leading party, the DUP under Jeffrey Donaldson, even says the protocol needs to be completely rewritten, as delusional as ever. It's out of the question, according to Brussels, and they really mean that. The Irish-born ancestry President Joe Biden is putting pressure on all sides from the other side of the Atlantic. He would love to visit the Emerald Isle in April on the anniversary of the peace treaty, which was not least due to American negotiating skills. The main obstacle to reaching an agreement is likely to be the extent to which the European Court of Justice, the ECJ, should act as an arbitrator in any disputes between the contracting parties. But it's about the single market, so they have to stay. Donaldson and the Tory hardliners have so far strictly rejected this. And now the diplomats of both sides are in demand, but only one side is realistic here. After all, some signals from London speak for a cautious rapprochement with the largest domestic market in the world. Opposition leader Keir Starmer is also in favor of a more pragmatic approach to Brussels, which the majority of the electorate seem to want. They are encouraged by many celebrities, Hermann Hauser, for example. Like many other scientists, the Vienna-born physicist and entrepreneur is struggling with the Brexit in his adopted country. Sooner or later, he says, the kingdom will have closer ties with the EU again. But that doesn't mean rejoining. I will talk about this in another video today, that it will not happen very soon. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.